The morning sun filtered through the tall glass walls of Henderson Motors, a luxury car showroom that smelled of oil, rubber, and frustration. In the center of the glossy floor stood a breathtaking red supercar, sleek, powerful, and utterly silent. The latest Italian model worth over $1 million had stopped working 2 weeks ago. Dozens of mechanics had tried to revive it, yet none succeeded. It had become a monument to failure. At the far corner, Samuel Green, the 60-year-old janitor, quietly swept the floor. His grey hair peeked out from under a faded cap, and his uniform, though clean, had long lost its color. For most people there, Samuel was invisible. The man who appeared at dawn, cleaned up the mess, and left before anyone noticed. But behind his tired eyes lived decades of experience. Years once spent fixing engines before life forced him to trade his mechanic's gloves for a janitor's broom. As the frustrated head mechanic, Jake, kicked the tire of the car, he muttered, "Even the engineers from Italy gave up. It's impossible." Laughter and sighs filled the room, but Samuel simply paused his sweeping. He gazed at the supercar, listening, not with his ears, but with a mechanic's instinct. There was a rhythm in silence, and to him, the machine wasn't dead. It was calling for the right touch. "Hey, old man," one of the young technicians joked. "You think you can fix this miracle of technology?" The room burst into laughter. Samuel smiled faintly, gripping the broom tighter. "Sometimes," he said softly, "it's not about technology. It's about understanding the heart of the machine." His words were met with more laughter, but one person, the showroom manager, Clara Henderson, looked thoughtful. She had known Samuel for years, but had never seen that quiet confidence before. Something about his tone made her pause. As Samuel continued cleaning, his eyes never left the car. He could almost feel the gears whispering secrets only he could hear. That night, long after everyone went home, Samuel lingered. Under the flickering lights, he walked up to the supercar, placed his hand gently on the hood, and whispered, "Let's see what's really broken inside you." It was the beginning of something no one would ever forget. The clock struck midnight. The showroom was silent, except for the soft hum of rain tapping on the glass roof. Samuel stood alone before the supercar, the janitor's broom now leaning against the wall. He took a deep breath and opened the hood, revealing the complex maze of wires, sensors, and polished metal that intimidated even the best mechanics. But Samuel's eyes softened. He wasn't afraid. To him, it was like meeting an old friend. He pulled out an old oil-stained toolkit from his locker, a relic from his younger days as a mechanic. Each tool had a memory, a story, a scar. Slowly and carefully he began to examine the engine. His fingers moved with surprising precision, guided not by manuals or modern scanners, but by instinct. He listened, really listened, to the faint tick of cooling metal and the echo of what once was a roaring engine. As he worked, flashes of his past filled his mind. The small garage he once owned, his wife bringing him coffee, the laughter of his little boy playing with toy cars. Then came the accident, the explosion that burned his shop and ended his career. Since then, he had cleaned floors instead of fixing engines. Yet tonight, fate had given him one more chance. Hours passed. Samuel found a flaw no one else had noticed, a microscopic crack in the custom fuel line that caused a pressure imbalance. Smiling faintly, he whispered, "So that's your secret." Using nothing more than a simple wrench, a bit of wire, and his steady hands, he fixed it temporarily, just enough to test his theory. He turned the key. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a low growl, deep and hesitant, rose into a thunderous roar. The engine came alive, the supercar vibrating with power and pride. Samuel stepped back, tears filling his eyes. It was as if his soul had been reignited. At that exact moment, Clara, the manager who had forgotten her phone inside, walked in. Her eyes widened as she saw the impossible. The janitor, standing before a roaring supercar that no one could repair. "Mr. Green, how did you—" she whispered, utterly speechless. Samuel only smiled and said quietly, "Sometimes. All it needs is someone who still believes it can be fixed. By morning, The entire showroom buzzed like a hive of disbelief. Word had spread. The supercar was alive. The same car that had defeated world-class engineers now purred perfectly, its engine smooth and flawless. Mechanics gathered around it, whispering in shock and confusion. Some refused to believe it. "There's no way the old janitor did this," one of them muttered. "He probably just turned it on by accident." But Clara Henderson knew better. She had seen it with her own eyes. Samuel standing proudly beside the revived machine, his hands covered in grease, his eyes glowing like someone who had just found purpose again. She called a meeting. Everyone gathered around as she said firmly, "Mr. Samuel Green brought this car back to life. From this day on, he deserves our respect, and maybe a position worthy of his skill." The room went silent. A few clapped politely while others exchanged doubtful glances. Samuel stepped forward, his humble smile unwavering. "I didn't do this for attention," he said softly. "I did it because I couldn't stand watching something beautiful being given up on. Machines are like people. They break down when no one listens." Those words struck deep. Even the arrogant head mechanic Jake looked down, ashamed of how they had mocked him. Later that day, a sleek black limousine arrived. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. Mr. Lorenzo, the car's original owner, a billionaire entrepreneur. When he heard that his beloved supercar had finally been fixed, he demanded to meet the genius behind it. When Samuel appeared, still wearing his janitor's uniform, Lorenzo was taken aback. "You're telling me this man repaired a system even my engineers couldn't understand?" he asked skeptically. Clara nodded. "Yes, sir." "He's the one." Lorenzo studied Samuel, then smiled faintly. "Sometimes the greatest talents hide in plain sight," he said. "Mr. Green, how would you like to work for me as my personal chief mechanic?" The room gasped. Samuel blinked in disbelief, his heart pounding. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. Then he nodded humbly. "I'd be honored, sir." And just like that, the invisible janitor became the man everyone was suddenly proud to know. A few weeks later, the world knew his name, Samuel Green, the janitor who revived a dead supercar. Newspapers wrote about him. Car magazines called him a mechanical legend. Yet Samuel remained the same humble man, still showing up early, still polishing tools, still believing that every machine had a soul. Now working in Lorenzo Motors, a state-of-the-art workshop filled with engineers from around the world. Samuel trained a new generation of mechanics. They watched him in awe, how he touched an engine with patience, how he listened instead of rushing. For him, fixing cars wasn't about fame or money. It was about love, purpose, and redemption. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Samuel sat beside the same red supercar, now fully restored, gleaming under golden light. Lorenzo approached with a smile. "You know," he said, "that night you fixed this engine, you didn't just repair a car. You reminded us all why we fell in love with machines in the first place." Samuel chuckled softly. "I didn't do anything special. I just listened. Machines talk to those who care enough to hear." At that moment, Clara entered with a small envelope. "Mr. Green," she said warmly, "this came for you." Inside was a letter. An offer from a leading automotive institute to teach young engineers. They wanted him to inspire students with his story, to show that true skill comes from heart and experience, not just technology. Samuel looked at the letter for a long time, his eyes misting. "All my life," he whispered, "I thought I was finished. I was wrong." Later that night, as he locked up the workshop, he paused to look back at the supercar one last time. Its reflection shimmered in his eyes, not as a trophy but as a reminder. Every dent, every scratch, every failure in life could be repaired if one never stopped believing. He smiled, whispering to himself, even the broken can create miracles. Then he walked out into the quiet night, the sound of his footsteps blending with the distant echo of a perfectly tuned engine, the heartbeat of a man who had finally found his purpose again.